I think that we should get started. There is a huge amount of info to present tonight. So if everybody's ready to get going, I think I'm ready. You ready, Ash?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so without further ado, I'm turning it over to Lottie Moody.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I just want to do a quick introduction, especially for those of you who are joining for the first time this year. It's fantastic to have everybody joining us here this evening. A quick introduction to FilmDis. FilmDis started life back in 2014 as a discussion on Twitter about how disability was being represented in the media. 9 years and an incredible amount of work later, FilmDis is a fully fledged media monitoring organization offering many things, including research, education, media creation and development, and consulting on disability representation in film, television, video games, and all other forms of popular media. The power behind that organization is screenwriter Ashtyn Law and director Dom Evans. Ashtyn Law is the screenwriter behind The Park, It's for Waffles, Tracy, Chickadee, Overture, Trip, Nance and Sydney, and Inamorata. She's currently developing scripts for 4 new large-scale television series and has worked with major studios including HBO, Showtime, Acorn, 20th Century Fox, CBS, ABC, and Disney. Multi-award-winning director and Hollywood disability consultant Dom Evans has worked on multiple films and television series for networks that include Lionsgate, Discovery Plus, and Netflix.
Wake up.
They have consulted for major studios, including HBO, Microsoft, Cinemax, Starz, EA, CBS, Disney, and Sony. And so, without further ado, as there is a lot of new information to get through and to enjoy this evening, back to you, Dom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to Lottie. Lottie has been invaluable to us and is amazing and does so much in the film industry up in Canada and beyond. So if you are, if you have any film needs, I highly recommend Lottie. She has been such a huge, huge help in planning this event and getting many of you here. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of a very special edition of our annual FilmDis study into disability representation on television. I want to first acknowledge that Ashtyn and I are coming to you from Anishinaabe land, or what is referred to now as Southern Michigan. I'm Dom Evans, the co-founder of FilmDis. FilmDis was started with my life work and creative partner, Ashtyn Law. I'm a 42-year-old trans-identified non-binary person. I use he, they pronouns. I'm a white non-binary person with dark hair, which is kind of obscured by the fact I'm laying down, which I do because of chronic pain. Laying down allows me to focus more on what I'm saying while I'm presenting as opposed to my pain level. So I'm wearing a purple shirt that says Stolen Land on it, and I have on black rectangular glasses. For those who don't know anything about me, I am multiply disabled. I was born with a physical disability called spinal muscular atrophy, and I've been a wheelchair user since I was 16. I'm also neurologically diverse with ADHD, OCD, anxiety, and PTSD. Beyond that, I'm a hard of hearing coda. I grew up in a house with a deaf parent, and chronic and mental illness are prominent in my family on both sides. I've experienced disability personally as a parent, as a child of someone disabled, and as a witness to many years of ableism and abuse that the disabled community has faced. All of this has contributed to my desire to fight for greater and better representation of disability in all forms of media. My background is in the media. I grew up a darling in the local media in my hometown of Toledo. I was a child actor, performer, and opera and Broadway trained singer. I had a very rare opportunity in that directors often gave me opportunities to perform despite being disabled. So I've always seen the potential of inclusion of the inclusion of disabled people. As I got older, discrimination started happening more and more frequently. That, with an injury that led me to spend more time in bed due to chronic pain, left me to reevaluate my priorities. This led to film school, where I became the first wheelchair user to make it through a very rough and ableist film production program. Everyone acts like this is such a big deal, but it really was my sheer stubbornness and unwillingness to quit that got me through, despite experiencing massive amounts of abuse. I laugh when I say I was a glutton for punishment, but it's just to hide the tears. I've always been creative, and so has Ashtyn. We know that we have the talent and knowledge to change the industry, to make it better, not only for disabled people, but for all marginalized. We also have the experience. We've been on sets, we've run sets, we've written scripts, we've created worlds. We've gotten evaluations, breakdowns, and disseminations of scripts, and we've torn apart scripts ourselves. And this is why we do this study. I grew up never seeing myself on television. As a trans wheelchair using disabled person, I've still never seen myself really, truly, and fully represented other than my own representation. I don't want another generation of disabled children growing up and not understanding what it's like to see themselves represented. The pain of not being represented can affect everything from your self-worth to whether you believe you deserve to live in the world or not. Lack of representation impacts the legislation that's passed about the disabled community. It impacts how we're treated, how people feel about disabled people. It can have a long-term lasting impact on everything from how we're able to live our lives to where we're able to live. There's nothing in a disabled person's life that relates to their disability, and even beyond that, that is not impacted by disabled representation. So to us, getting more disabled people in the media, particularly on television, is one of the most important ways to address this harm. That's why we're here today, and that's why we continue to do this study. Ashtyn is a screenwriter and I'm a director. As important as this work is to us, our real desire is to get out there and make television. We believe that doing this study has given us innumerable skills. We've noticed patterns in representation. We watch so much television that we can tell you what's going to happen on so many shows before they even finish airing. We see the mistakes and we know how to fix them. That's why along with this paper, we've been developing television pilots that we hope will change the state of representation for disabled people in new and exciting ways. I truly believe that we would not be able to create worlds and screenplays so effectively if not for this amazing study, which is in its third iteration. This is the third study that we've released, and this goes beyond patterns that have been emerging since our first study was started in 2015. At this point, Hollywood is doing the bare minimum of what they could possibly do for the disabled. And it's about time that we as a community of disabled folks and our allies start demanding inclusion. Things cannot get better for disabled people if we don't. I'm so grateful that all of you have joined us, and I'm excited to share a bit of the paper with you. So let's start with a reading of our FilmDis white paper on disability representation on television, examining 250 TV shows the pandemic years. Yes. Could
I'm really sorry to
you-
interrupt.
Dom, I'm really sorry to interrupt. This is the interpreter. We need to mute Christopher Cornier. I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Yeah,
And I want to, and what you're saying is so important. I want to make sure I get it on my hand.
yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna stop and try to figure it out. Yes, could everybody please, if you're not speaking, could you please mute your microphone? Let's see. I wonder if there's a way that I can I mute?
I think we're good now. It sounds like everyone is
Okay.
muted.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep. Okay, so we will commence with our reading now. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry about the noise. It was harder for me to see the message while it was happening. So now that we've got that figured out, thank you for muting everyone, and we can get on with. I'm really excited. This is a reading of the paper, the actual paper. I took parts of it that I thought were interesting and kind of combined them together. So it might not flow as freely as the paper, but I think these were some of the most important things that I wanted to share tonight with you. So we're going to get started right now. So, how did the pandemic truly affect disabled representation? How much more have we discovered about the patterns we see in disability representation, and what surprises do we have to offer within the data after 3 intensive studies into disability representation on television? Buckle up, because you're about to find out. The more we learn about representation through the data in these studies, the more questions we have about what Hollywood really thinks about disability. When you don't see yourself represented in the media, you wonder if you deserve to really exist. And a lot of non-disabled people give you the message you don't deserve to exist. You internalize that. Lack of representation does not help. Disabled mimicry is part of the reason we started doing this study. The rampant amount of mimicry, which is in turn rewarded with statues and praises by Hollywood, made us passionate about greater inclusion and better representation. You can't improve disability representation without addressing disabled mimicry. We understand you may not have heard this terminology before. That's because years ago, we created it as an alternative to terminology that marginalized disabled people, particularly Black and Brown disabled people, said was harming their communities. It replaces terminology like cripping up, crip face, and disability drag. We personally have problems with all of this terminology as it appropriates terms from other cultures and communities. Disabled mimicry is the act of portraying disability, typically for a role on stage, in film, or on television, when you are either not disabled at all or don't have the disability you are portraying. There are, of course, instances where portraying a disability you don't have is acceptable. For example, wheelchair users might not always have the disability they are cast as having, and people might not know, or it might not be relevant to the story. Disabled mimicry is specifically when a disabled person portrays a disability vastly different than the disability they may have. Think a wheelchair user being portrayed by someone with a disability that does not include any mobility issues or does not affect their ability to walk or do physical things. A deaf person with no mobility issues is a great example. That casting would be considered mimicry. The same would be someone with a disability who has great hearing but is cast as someone deaf. Say an autistic or someone with dwarfism who takes the role but is not deaf and doesn't understand deaf culture or what it's like to be deaf. We don't have any examples of disabled actors that we know of portraying disabilities they don't have in this study, but it has happened before. The majority of people engaging in disabled mimicry, though, are non-disabled people playing disabled roles. The vast majority of disabled characters are portrayed by actors who don't have enough biographical info or web presence to allow us to know whether they are disabled or not. Out of 1,348 disabled actors playing 1,342 disabled characters, 843 are actors whom we have no idea if they're disabled or not. We've discussed a little behind the reasoning why the disability status of so many disabled characters is unknown. One reason could include the fact that so many disabled characters are small roles, primarily bit characters. These actors may not have biographies, pictures, or other things that help during our investigation into whether each character is played by an actor that is openly disabled. That is incredibly common for this study. We would say that this is the leading reason why we don't know. We can't find information on the actor telling us one way or another. Another reason is because disabled actors can be afraid to disclose, and if they can hide their disability, a lot of them will. Hollywood is not kind to disabled actors, so hiding a disability is not surprising. We've spoken with so many actors across the years who have lost jobs and access to audition in Hollywood by coming out as disabled, and some don't have a choice. For those who do, though, coming out can be job limiting, so many don't. We are certain that there are definitely some actors who are disabled that have not disclosed for this very reason, who are a part of this study. Others may not understand they're able to identify as disabled because society still has skewed ideas about what disability is. For example, many with chronic disabilities and mental health disabilities don't always feel they have a right to call themselves disabled, even though they would benefit from some type of accommodation, which can include things like medication, treatment options, therapies, etc. If more people were aware of how many disabled people there are in the world, it's documented at over 1 billion, but think about how many people don't understand they are disabled or not. That number is higher, we are certain. Perhaps Hollywood would consider casting more disabled people. Of course, even when we do know about disability, there are more non-disabled people partaking in disabled mimicry than there are disabled people playing disabled characters. There are 395 non-disabled actors playing disabled characters. By comparison, there are only 110 disabled actors playing disabled characters. That's about 8% of representation played by actual disabled actors or people we know are openly disabled. When it comes to race and disabled mimicry, white people obviously dominate everything. But when it comes to unknown sexuality, every community based on race has high numbers. Hollywood does not like showing disabled people with whom you can look at visibly and determine they are disabled just by looking at them. This is why so many disabled actors are excluded, even from auditioning for disabled roles. Breaking down the 843 disabled characters played by actors with unknown disability status by race, we find this. There are 553 white actors, 160 Black actors, and 130 Indigenous or other POC actors with unknown disability status. The next section we are exploring is those that are actively participating in disabled mimicry. These are non-disabled actors. We are not trying to shame them. Most of them don't understand the harm they are causing. Hollywood has taught them that these roles are a challenge and therefore will win them awards. So they're often highly coveted roles. It's interesting to note that white representation stayed the same percentage-wise as those with unknown disability status for the amount of representation by non-disabled actors portraying disabled characters. Black actors and IPOC actors have switched places, but the percentages are only off by a couple values. So even though the IPOC category had a few more actors than Black, who are engaging in mimicry. These communities are very close to the percentages they have for unknown disability status. We hope that by now, anyone reading this recognizes that all of these patterns that continue repeating themselves when it comes to racial, sexuality, and gender breakdowns are a symptom of how disability is cast in Hollywood. Last study, we wrote about how we believe that Hollywood is using a tally sheet when it comes to disability representation. We believe that all of these patterns support this hypothesis. The final thing we're going to look at for this category is how many actors are actually disabled. We've already stated that only about 8% of actors playing disabled characters are disabled. When we started our first study in 2018, we were angry when we found out that only about 10% of the actors playing disabled characters were known to be disabled. Our second study had the same result, about 10%. So to go down when the numbers are already so low is disappointing, infuriating, and confounding. Hollywood claims they are getting better when it comes to representation, but we've actually found less LGBTQIA disabled characters this year. When you only have 10% authentic representation, any percentage loss is a significant amount of representation to lose from that. So the most intriguing part of this breakdown is the fact that white representation went up by almost 10 percentage points when it comes to authentic casting by disabled actors. You know what that means? White disabled actors received at least 10% more representation when it came to casting disabled characters. In the two previous breakdowns, Black and IPOC representation split respectively approximately 20% and 15% of the representation. For disabled actors playing disabled characters, this has been reduced to about 10% to 15% per breakdown. This means about 25% of the representation is split between Black and IPOC representation, leaving 75% to white disabled roles. Again, when you have so few characters, those percentage points are huge drops in representation. The disabled mimicry category has done a fantastic job of outlining all the ideas we proposed, not only in this paper, but in our previous two papers. The more familiar we become with disabled representation, the more patterns we are seeing that are exploitative, unfair, and help to explain why both disabled actors struggle to gain access to casting and auditioning in Hollywood, and why disabled representation is often unauthentic and harmful. Our hope is that Hollywood will start paying attention to our work, will continue consulting us on representation when it comes to disability, and will allow us and other disabled creators to start sharing our work, our scripts on television and in film. One thing that is important to stress is that you can both like things that are harmful and recognize the harm they cause. That is what the disabled community must start doing if they want to see change in Hollywood. At this point, if we want to actually have decent, accurate, and inclusive representation, we believe that not only disabled people, but our non-disabled family, allies, and supporters must stop consuming media that degrades and harms disabled communities and individuals. So that was a reading from our paper. It is 166 pages. We have a fact sheet and a easy language guide that you can find on our website at FilmDis.com. You just have to go to our research projects section. So I hope that you enjoyed that little sneak peek of the paper. We are going to start a presentation now. I'm going to take a drink real quick. I need to drink water, but if you want to take a drink real quick, just a minute break. Well, just a minute break real quick. So. And as you can see, that is Ashtyn's lovely arm.
Hi.
Ashtyn has a bit of social anxiety, so she prefers if I kind of lead things, and I'm kind of mouthy and talkative anyway, so it works for us.
I'm also webcamless, and it's easier if we're in the same room to not
Yeah.
attempt to squish myself into the camera.
Yes. Okay, so let me get the
No.
hang on. Let me get yeah, I gotta go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna, because of how I have to share it, I gotta do it this way. So the joys of accessibility when you're disabled and figuring out this stuff. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see everything.
Is it okay if y'all read it for us blind folks?
If we what?
If you read what's on the
Oh
screen.
yeah, we're gonna be reading everything. Yeah. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that if you are able to, if you can see it. Okay. There we go. Okay. Oh, I like that. It pops up when people are in the waiting room. Okay.
Okay.
So,
It's coming up really nicely.
okay. So, yes, the first slide says FilmDis, disability representation on TV, the pandemic years 2020 to 2022. So that's, we specifically focused on the pandemic years because we wanted to see how that impacted representation, and surprisingly it did. So, well, not surprisingly, but you know, we're seldom surprised by anything. Okay, so this slide, it has like a film camera on it, and it says today's presentation, topic outline, the process, how FilmDis does what we do, the categories, how disabilities are broken down and counted for the study, the intersections of disability, what other factors do we take into account? They include gender identity, racial identity, sexual identity, 2SL, LGBTQIA+, age group, disabled mimicry. We're going to go through what is it. You got a little sneak peek in the paper, the results, the harm it causes, and then our closing thoughts. So this is the outline of what we're going to cover in these slides. So let's start with the process, how FilmDis does what we do. And that, what does that say?
It says set up professional.
Okay, sorry, something was blocking my screen and it was the audio. Okay, so now we got this and I can
think you can
see.
move that,
Yeah, okay. The FilmDis disability representation on TV study is generally an annual study. Basic rules and guidelines are employed to gather a look at the landscape of disability representation on television. This study is a little different because of the addition of COVID on the entertainment industry. Instead of a one-year study, the pandemic years covers 2. Future studies are returning to an annual format. Do you want to tell them real quick what we're doing for this study, Ash? Like how it's different?
Other than it being an annual study? Or
Yeah, no, we're watching how we're watching.
Oh yeah, this is actually the first year where we've been caught up enough that we're actually watching the shows as they air. So we should be able to get the next study out considerably faster.
We may have a second study out this year is how it may end up being. So we may actually know what happened after the pandemic by the end of 2023. So we're really, really excited about that because for so many years, whenever people would ask me, hey, are you watching whatever's airing live? I would always have to say, I'm sorry, I'm a year behind, but now I can be like in the conversation. And I think that's really helpful for people to know what's going on now. So we're really excited about that. And we're also including a new category. We are going to break down what the representation says. Is it better dead than disabled? Is it a disabled villain story? Is it a one-off? Now that we know where representation is, we want to know what representation is doing, because we have a lot of theories about what it's doing, but once we have the data, we can, you know, definitively say this is the problems, and how you fix them is, you know, you can consult us and we'll tell you. So, okay, so guidelines for the pandemic years, 250 shows were watched, 125 each for me and Ash, although it's probably more like 115 for me, because I have rejection sensitivity to shows sometimes. So Ashton sometimes does watch things that I either can't get through, or she occasionally takes on my
we try to be non-biased, but we do occasionally switch shows that we just can't watch.
yeah we do. We do switch shows and whatnot with one another if the other one can't tolerate it or whatnot. So she did watch a few more, but that's why I tend to write the paper, because I would say all 3 studies, Ashton has been the you know, applause everybody. She has been especially our first study, she probably watched 100 more shows than me. I'm not lying. I was not real good with my ADHD that year, but I've gotten much better at it. I'm a pro at this now. So multiple seasons for some shows meant that we watched 282 seasons of television. So whoops. To be counted, each season needed to begin airing between June 1st, 2020 and May 31st, 2022. All shows had to be narrative fictional, so we don't do like reality TV, we don't do documentary style shows, they're all fictional and narrative. Shows had to be primarily English speaking, which means they often came from the US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK. And access to each show had to be available on cable or streaming in the US, or you know, of course, local channels. It had to be accessible to me and Ash, essentially. So the categories. So we have broken things down. We have about, I think when you count them all, there were 16, but not all of them are listed because we don't, we were counting people in comas. We're considering not doing it this year because one, comas are like never played by disabled actors, and a lot of them are just plot devices.
They're also usually healed within 28 minutes.
Yes, they are usually healed. So we're considering dropping that category. And also random and superhero, they're just very obscure disabilities, or they just didn't fit in another category. I think we had one where a woman was healed in a supernatural way, but you saw her disabled in flashbacks all throughout the series. So that was still disabled representation to me, but she's technically not disabled anymore. So we counted her as like random, or sometimes superheroes will have weird disabilities that manifest like that. Although I will say we did count one case of werewolf PTSD as a mental health disability because it did manifest very similar to just human PTSD. So it's subjective sometimes about where we put things. We really do everything on a case-by-case basis when categorizing, because we want to try to be as accurate as possible. So the categories are addiction, amputee, blind low vision, body and facial differences, cancer, chronic, deaf, hard of hearing, dwarfism, intellectual disability, learning disability, multiple disabilities, neurological, neurodivergent, which we break up into 3 sections, and physical. And the neurodivergent is broke up into a mental health / psychosocial overall. That's for things like bipolar or schizophrenia or something where you have an actual diagnosis. There is an autistic / ADHD category, and then there is NOS, which is not otherwise specified. And when we get to that section, I can explain more about that. The intersections we cover in this study are gender identity. We have representation of all of these, cisgender males, cisgender female, non-binary, trans female, trans male, trans non-binary, and gender non-conforming in this study. This is the first study we have trans male and non-binary representation. So we did have trans female in past studies. Racial identity, we cover, we break things down to white, Black, and Indigenous, and other people of color. The big communities we see are Indigenous, Latina, and Asian. Sexual identity, two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, pansexual, and asexual. We tend to count bisexual, pansexual together. And then age group, we consider any character a baby if they're under 2, a child if they're between 3 to 12, a teenager if they're 13 to 19, an adult if they're 20 to 59, and an elder if they're over 60. So these are the comparisons to our last 2 studies. Study comparisons where we've been and where we're at. Study years are 2018 to 2019 was our first study. We had 708, we found 708 disabled characters on 151 shows. We watched 180 shows for that year. Our second study was for 2019 to 2020. We found 1,198 disabled characters on 218 shows. We had, we watched 250 shows that year. And then from 2020 to 2022, we found 1,342 characters on 216 shows out of 250 we watched. And you're probably saying, wait a minute, Dom, in your last thing, oh, whoops, hang on. In your last, in the read through, you said there were 1,348 actors. Well, that's because you have characters like the ones on This Is Us, where they play one character with multiple actors at different ages. So we always have a few more actors playing characters. So we have to do like 2 sets of data, some of them with the character data and some of them with the amount of actors. And I will, when we get to that section, or when we get to our thank you, I can really explain what our data analyst did because he did so much work for us. So the takeaways is fewer shows and more disabled characters. So this study, we had fewer shows than last year, but we have more disabled characters, which is kind of interesting. More streaming shows featured disability. So that was fun to discover. Local networks offer more disability representation in general, though. And why is that, Ashton?
Because the average local show will have anywhere from 13 to 22 episodes, and the average streaming show has anywhere from 8 to 10.
So while the streaming shows are more likely to, show disability, they're not having as many characters because there's less episodes. So local shows have more episodes, you just read it there, meaning more change for representation. I mean, we're answering ourselves right here. Disability is present on more shows than not, but that's not good enough to create a positive change. Very true, very true. And that's another reason why I think it's so important that we break down motivation of disability, So how we see disabled people on TV directly relates to how they are treated, and the results are unsurprising and grim. So We're going to go through the disability sections. I'm going to try to break them down a little bit. Ash, would you be willing to read the graph real quick for Anita? Just tell me like what the percentage
Okay,
is.
so they're percentages of addiction. Drugs in a general sense, like they're just like, I'm addicted to drugs or whatever, is 43.3% of characters. There's 33.2% of people that are addicted to alcohol. There are 5.9% of people that are multiply addicted to various things. Gambling is at 5.9%. 0.7% of people are addicted to sex. And then there's 11.1% of people that are listed as NOS.
Yeah, which is not other specified.
These are often characters that are like in rehab settings, but they don't really take the time to let you know, they're like in rehab
Yeah,
for something, or
yeah.
they're in, but you don't know what they're there for.
So addiction is our largest category with 289 disabled characters. Males dominate with 166 of those characters. There are only 11 2S-LGBTQ plus characters in this category. More characters with unknown sexuality than queer, bisexual, lesbian, 2S-LGBTQ ones. So white characters dominate. Are we surprised? You're gonna get very used to me saying this about white people tonight. So multiple refers to two types of separate addiction: a drug, alcohol, gambling, or drugs and sex. So we separate. So if you have multiple forms of one category, like multiple addiction, multiple chronic disabilities, we'll consider you still in that category. The multiple category we have later on is like you have addiction, but you also have a mental health issue, or you have addiction and you're also physically disabled, or you have cancer and you're also deaf, or it's multiple in different categories. So that's the difference for the slides. So NOS is for individuals that reference an addiction or are in a rehab setting, as Ashton said. So, well, we're doing a good job. Okay, so amputee, 45 characters, a significant drop from previous studies, and Ashton will go through.
Oh boy. Okay, I think they're all listed here. Let's see. We got 17.8% is a missing leg. 11.1% is a hand amputee. 8.9% is an eye. Is that 8.9? 8.9% is two fingers, and 6.7% is one finger.
Yeah.
Both legs is 6.7%. A toe is 4.4%. A thumb is 2.2%. A finger and a leg is 2.2%. Both arms is 2.2%, and NOS is 6.7%.
Yeah, and you missed arm. Arm is 17.82.
Oh, sorry.
No
Sorry
worries, no worries. So 75% of character representation is cisgender and white. I have a lot of feelings about this category, and we'll get into them in like the later section. There are certain ways disability is presented, and amputees are often male. They're often soldiers. They're often aggressive. When a man is an amputee, he's aggressive and he's strong and he's valiant. But when a woman is an amputee, it might be comedic. Or what are some of the other reps you see, Ash?
For women, a lot of times it's comedic. Occasionally you'll get, the female soldier.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it's a punchline to a joke.
Yep. Diversity is lacking overall, with 34 white amputees and only 11 Black and Indigenous POC group together. So only 11 characters. That's just ridiculous, So only 8.9% of characters represented are 2S-LGBTQ, with 35% unknown sexuality, or while 35%. So again, unknown sexuality, like it just permeates through this category. And part of that is because we're not supposed to be sexual. People say they don't want to see us being sexual. They don't think it's realistic for people to fall in love with us. And, you know, also like the infantilization of disabled people is a really common reason for this. So, and if you have like a bit character, you're not even getting to know them enough to learn what their sexual identity is, or what their gender identity is, or anything like that. So only 10 actors hired, or 22%, are known to be amputees, and that's disgusting. I mean, you can physically tell if, you know, you can see someone is an amputee, and the fact that only 10 of the actors we knew were amputees, the fact that Hollywood is willing to pay to remove a body part, you know, when they could just hire an amputee, it's just infuriating. Oh, whoops, I double switched. Oh no. Okay, there we go.
We good?
Okay, blind, low vision. I'm not sure. So
let me see.
oh yeah, that's disabled mimicry. Right
Oh
there.
yes, this is the disabled mimicry. So blind and low vision, the actors that are actually blind or low vision are 22% or 22.7%. Sorry. The ones that were not blind are 45.5%. And the ones that we couldn't find any information about one way or the other was 31.8%.
Yep. Okay, let's see. Is there a difference in the report on limb difference people versus amputees? Many of them are not amputees. Oh, that's very interesting, Sarah. We do have a body and facial difference category. So yes, we do separate. Yes.
But we don't often see limb difference, as opposed to like,
Yeah, we
there's
generally
not a
see
lot of like
representation of
Yeah.
limb difference. Yeah, well, when we said that the representation is generally soldiers or comedic effect, that's basically all there really is. We don't really, occasionally, if you have an actual amputee, like a really good example is I did the show La Brea, and the daughter is actually an amputee, and she just gets to be a kid who ends up like in this Jurassic world. And it's really interesting because they have to like accommodate her as an amputee and figure out, you know, what to do. So, but like it's not done in a way where her disability is really like pointed out in a harmful way. She just gets to be a disabled character. So yeah. So thank you for that question. We will have a Q&A, so please save your any further questions to the end. You can ask anything you want. We will probably answer as long as it's about the study. Anything else I can't guarantee. So, okay. One show can greatly impact disability representation in a positive or negative way. So Ashtyn and I randomly choose our shows to try to make it fair. We will occasionally like kind of try if we know something as disability, because we do want to make sure disability is included, but we don't want to like stack our results. So we just randomly watch things and we randomly go through networks, and sometimes that means a show that we wanted to watch or include doesn't get included. And for this study, that was the Apple TV show C. One of the seasons did not air in the years and the other one did. So we had 1 year we could have watched, but for whatever reason, we just could not get to that show. And what ended up happening is blind and low vision representation was really impacted. Not watching Apple TV C shows that when a show includes disability and is removed or canceled, representation disappears in this current TV model. There are no 2 LGBTQ representations of disability at all by blind or low vision characters. There are 15 white characters versus 6 Black, Indigenous, or other POC characters. Double the number of men that are blind or low vision as opposed to women. And it's the only category to feature a baby in the representation, which it's sad that like children and babies just don't really get represented as much. And we'll talk about that when we get to the age, when we talk about age a little more. And you can really check out my thoughts on age in the paper. I really go into my own opinions as a person who grew up not seeing disability as a disabled child, you know, so like it really impacts your self-esteem and self-worth to not see disability on television. So, okay, body and facial difference. So this is the category that it includes any type of body or facial difference. It could include limb difference. It could include scars, burns. So Ashtyn has what we have.
76.1% of the representation is scars.
Yeah.
11.4% is burns. 9.1% is considered NOS. 1.1% is ptosis. Is that what you say?
Yeah, ptosis.
Ptosis.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more commonly used for aesthetic and less to represent disability. And I think that that really explains where limb difference is, because we don't have any examples of limb difference. We have amputees or we have body and facial differences. So, and none of them just contain, it's just like scars and burns. 87.5% of this categories is scars and burns, often used for pity, throwaway disabilities, or to make characters look mean, damaged, or interesting. 61 cisgender males to 27 cisgender females. Again, as I told you later in the section, we're going to talk about, you know, how representation is for men versus women. And again, this is seen as a tough category. You know, I keep thinking of the like shows with pirates and how they always give like pirates the scars, you know what I mean? And they're so like, you know, tough because they have their scars. And I think that really personifies where body and facial differences is allowed to be on television. And it really, really needs to improve. So there is no trans representation. Black and IPOC characters included 22 for both groups and double the number of white representation at 44. So literally, white representation is twice as much as everybody. So 2 LGBTQ plus representation includes, is that 3?
3 gays,
Yeah.
3 bisexual or
bisexuals.
pansexuals, and 1 lesbian.
Well,
Yeah.
only 7% of representation included child and teenage roles. So cancer. So cancer is a big one. We got, I can read this. Do you want to read the bigger text? I'll read this smaller one right here.
Whatever you
Okay.
need to do.
So NOS is, I think, is that 30.6?
30.6.
Okay. Brain 9.2. Breast is 7.1, as is leukemia. Pancreatic is 5.1. Lung is 4.1. Stomach cancer is 3.1. Is that
Squamous cell.
Squamous cell is 3.1. Thyroid cancer 3.1. Metastatic cancer 3.1. Prostate 2%. Multiple 3.1. Terminal 2%. Lymphoma 3.1. Kidney 1%. And bone 1%.
So the type of representation is more varied here, but it could be because cancer is often not considered to be a disability in terms of like representation.
Yeah.
High representation relates to many one-off characters on medical dramas that are basically the story of the week. Representation leans towards white people at 50 characters. Black characters are next with 30, and there's only 18 IPOC characters represented. There's 56 men, 41 women, and 1 trans person. Only 5% of representation includes two LGBTQ plus characters. There were 4 gay characters, 1 bisexual, and the bisexual was a cis male.
Yep. Okay, we can do that again too, because I can, okay. Heart issues is 15.3. This is our chronic category. Kidney issue 12.4. Elder issues 10.8. Allergies 7.6. Multiple is 6%. HIV AIDS is 5.2. Liver issue is 3.2. Sleep issue is that 2.8? Yeah. Chronic pain 2.4. Arthritis 2%. Lupus is that 0.8. 0.8. Okay, and one-off is 10.4.
Yes. Okay, so there were 250 chances for representation and a startling lack of diversity in this category. 64.8% of characters were white, only 40 Black and 48 IPOC characters were represented. There were 140 cisgender males to 110 cisgender females. 57% of the representation were heterosexual. 37% didn't have a sexuality at all. There were only 12 gay characters, and there was only 1 lesbian and 1 bisexual. This was the most diverse category in terms of age. There were 137 adults, 73 elders, 24 teens, and 15 children.
I mean, I get excited because like you
Go
gotta
kids.
you gotta understand there are so many categories that have no children. It's like kids can't be disabled. Oh, also I did forget to say lung issues were 15.3? Yeah.
15.3.
Okay. Okay. So whoops, I keep going backwards. Okay, there we go. I got this.
You good? You got
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Is this working for you or do you want to switch?
I'm at your service.
Okay, so we have Ashton did the breakdown for this one, the deaf and hard of hearing category. Black males are 23.5.
5, yeah.
Okay. Indigenous and other POC females are 5.9. IPOC males 11.8% of the rep. White females 5.9% of the rep. White males, oh look at that, 47.1.
And this is super interesting because every group of females is the same exact amount.
5.9 Black females, 5.9 IPOC females, 5.9 white females.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's, so from 31 in the last study, there were 31 deaf or hard of hearing characters, and there's 17 in this one in the 2-year study.
Yeah.
So,
and it was because of one show getting
one
canceled.
show, yeah.
Shoshana Stern has a show. Yeah. This wasn't it. Yeah, she had a show, and just from losing that because it got canceled, we went from 31 to 17.
So 11 of the 17 characters are played by someone that is deaf or hard of hearing. 2S LGBTQ plus representation includes 1 lesbian. That's it. That's
one lesbian.
Just one lesbian.
Just
whole
one
community. So more unknown sexuality than anything. There were 13 adults, 2 elders, and 1 teenager and 1 child. Only 1 lead character, because most of the characters are one-off kind of bit throwaway characters. Let's see. No excuse for lack of representation or lack of diversity in the small amount of representation that is present.
Yep. 17 deaf characters to represent an entire community.
And 1 lesbian.
Yeah, and people keep asking me, how has CODA affected representation? Here you go, friends.
I mean, there's work to be done.
There is work to be done. Okay, so dwarfism. You can read that and then I'll go through.
Okay, we have IPOC females at 9.1%, IPOC males at 18.2%, white females at 36.4%, and white males at 36.4%.
Yep. So for dwarfism, out of 250 shows, we found no Black representation in this category. And I wanted to check before the thing, but I didn't have a chance. I think that might have been the same last year.
I'm almost certain in the shows that I watched that there hasn't been any representation for Black people in this category.
On all 3 studies or just this?
I would have to check the first one, but I'm pretty sure in the second one there wasn't anybody that I remember. So
come on, Hollywood, come on. Seriously, this is I'm trying to think if this is the only category. I know it's the only category for Black representation.
There's another category.
Oh yeah.
It's
Sorry,
pretty grim.
hold my beer. I forgot about that one. So you do so much research that everything. I'm so glad I have this because I have all the info. It's just in a jumble in my brain. So okay, so male and female representation is split, but white representation remains at a shocking 73%. Are we shocked?
Okay. I mean,
I'm not shocked at this point. So I wasn't shocked before starting this paper because I think, this is the 3rd paper and I think it's my sweetest paper because I was much more angry, a little bit younger, a little bit more of a rebel in the other papers. I think I just swore in the last paper at Hollywood for just like the 2/3 of the end of the paper where I just kept saying over and over, more non-white people, more gay people, more non-white people, over and over and over, because it just came to that. So absolutely no 2SL LGBTQ representation either. So it's not just Black representation. This dwarfism has a diversity problem when it comes to representation because it is primarily white representation and it's not that much anyway. There are only 11 characters with dwarfism. 11 out of 1,342 characters. 11. I mean, I don't even know what to say beyond. I'm just disgusted at this point. So no children or teens represented. 10 characters are adults, 1 elder. Vast improvement is necessary in this category because there's no reason not to include or represent this community. And I write a little bit about that. Dwarf representation or little people have been represented in Hollywood basically since Hollywood began. We know little people can act. We know we can name little people actors that we know can act, and it's clearly discrimination is what it is at this point. And here we go, the category Ashtyn was talking about, the worst represented category, intellectual disability. No Black rep, no 2S LGBTQ rep, no elder rep, no teen rep, no females, no trans. There were 4 intellectually disabled males.
And
Four.
3 of them were white.
3 of them were white. One of them was an IPOC
yeah.
character. Only one character got a sexuality, and it was heterosexual. 50% of actors were engaging in disabled mimicry in this category. Only 25% of actors were openly disabled.
Congratulations to that one.
Yeah, one of the most depressing categories. Like,
There
I
wasn't,
have to laugh because I will sob.
there
about
wasn't a
this.
lot I could say about that.
Can we get a, also, Lottie, can we get a time check real quick? I want to make sure I'm not taking too.
Yep, it is 8 minutes past 10. We've got another 52 minutes.
Yep. Okay, good. Okay. We're getting through it. We have
Yeah.
plenty of time. So, okay. Learning disabilities. Do you want to read these?
Okay, so 9.1% were speech disabilities. Dyslexia accounted for 18.2%, and NOS is 72.7%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So again, just 11 characters represent learning disabilities. And in the paper, I talk about how some of the rep is coming from actors that are actually learning disabled. In fact, Kenny Johnson, the shows, he's on multiple shows, but one of them is SWAT. And he actually went to the people in charge of his show and said, I'm dyslexic, and so is my daughter. And they weren't in this year's, but her daughter has been included in our past studies as a dyslexic, playing a dyslexic character. And I think that we may see more organic representation emerge like that, where a disabled actor creates the rep themselves. So the first category where white representation doesn't lead, but you need to count the Black, Indigenous, and other POC categories altogether. And then they outweigh the white representation. So 4 white characters, 4 Black characters, and 3 IPOC characters. Just 3 females, and none of them are Black. There is no trans representation and no 2S LGBTQ rep. And this is a big category for us, multiple.
Yes.
I like that it's big. I just wish it was better represented in a lot of ways, because
This one's.
many of us are multiply disabled. And even if you only have one disabled when you're born, we kind of collect them. Like all of us tend to collect disabilities as we age. And some of us, like me, collect them like Pokemon. So the multiple categories actually are really realistic category. So do you want to do that?
Black females are 8.4%. Black males are 8.4%. IPOC, don't make me laugh. IPOC females are 6.7%. IPOC males are 6.7%. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point.
Mhm.
White males are 35.3%. And white females are 33.6%.
Yeah. Did you see a pattern there? Like I'm laughing because wasn't it in the last paper, Ashton, where I said they're literally got a tally sheet and they're like, and this is not the only category where Black, we've had categories where the Black female and the IPOC female are the same values, and the Black male and the IPCOC males are the same values, or like the Black and IPOC rep tends to stack together while the white rep is all on its own.
It does feel a little bit funny when you're like, there's 77 white people, 6 Black people, and 6, like, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, we know how it happened.
I mean,
one of the top category, oh, I love this for this category. One of the top categories for disabled mimicry. Oh, gosh. 69% of representation is white. Both Black and IPOC rep is identical for male and female. Still more unknown sexuality than 2S LGBTQ+. 4 lesbians, 4 gays, 3 female bisexuals / pansexuals. Uh-oh. I don't know. Did I draw something?
I don't know.
Uh-oh. Was that me?
I don't
Okay.
think so. I don't know.
Well, we'll see if it disappears when I hit the thing over. The vast majority of actors are unknown disability status.
Oh, you forgot. This is the only category where an asexual is represented at all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about her?
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I think there's a way you can. Does anybody know about writing on? Because I know that you can write on them. Thanks for coming, Kendra. We really appreciate having you. Does anybody know how to get those marks across? Like,
I think you have to go to view options on your like when you're sharing. Somebody annotated it by
okay.
mistake.
Oh. Okay.
What do I do?
Is there's the annotate
Oh, yeah.
spot, but I don't.
Oh,
Somebody must have did it.
okay. How do I? Oh, erase. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
We're done annotating. Okay. No worries. No
All right.
worries.
Back at it.
Okay. Okay. Can everybody see okay? We're on neurodivergent. This is a interesting category because, as I said, we break this up into, we kind of count it together, but we also break it up into more sections because there's just so much info that can be ascertained from doing it that way. So do you want to read these?
Okay. And there are so many subcategories in this. It looks like some of them didn't actually show up because there wasn't enough space. So I will read the ones that are there, and you know.
Yeah.
So NOS is 59.2%, which we'll get into in a minute, I'm sure. PTSD is 13.8%. Autistic is 7.1%. Anxiety is 5.8%. Depression is 3.8%. Bulimia is 1.3%. Bipolar is 0.8%. And NPD is 0.4%.
Yeah. Nearly 60% of neurodivergent disabilities are considered NOS. And that kind of irks me, although you did have an explanation for why. Do you want to read through these two?
First, I will say, I think that number is going to go down after next year's study.
Why do you say that?
Because a majority of the characters that are listed as NOS come from the show New Amsterdam. And that's because New Amsterdam has a psychological wing that they film in. So a lot of times you'll see like characters in group therapy and you don't know specifically why they're in group therapy. So you list them as NOS because they're obviously valid, but we don't spend enough time with them to know how they're disabled.
So in the case of New Amsterdam, it's not necessarily a bad representation because it's, but you mentioned there's another show that also does psychology, and do you want to explain the difference?
So Chicago Med also has a psychiatrist that's a main part of their show, but he functions out of the emergency room. So when you watch New Amsterdam, a lot of times you'll see people going to therapy, or they're, regulating their medicine if they take medicine, or they're just, they're learning how to, deal with whatever, like they're seeing their doctor, and you see them in an everyday kind of setting. And Chicago Med, they're only going to the ER. So you see them for one episode as part of the story at their worst, presumably because they're in the emergency room, and then they patch them up and send them off. So maybe they're having delusions or something, and they say, oh well, we'll just give you some medicine, okay, and then they disappear. So you never
explain
know.
that one that you use as an example real quick.
Okay. From Chicago Med.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's a character that comes in and he has schizophrenia. And the thing that bothers me about this is you don't really know anything about about the character himself. It's all about how one of the other doctors doesn't believe that mental illness is really a thing, and that his disability is obviously something he can control, and he's very biased about the whole experience. So the psychiatrist, Dr. Charles, wants to show him what being schizophrenic is like. So he gives him a VR headset to allow him to experience being schizophrenic. So he puts on the headset and he's walking, in the VR experience, and he starts hearing voices, and they're like, you suck, and that lady over there is trying to poison you, and whatever, and he's getting kind of misty-eyed, and then he starts to see spiders, and it's like ridiculous. And then he pulls the headset off and he's crying, and he's like, oh my God, I didn't know that people had to live like this. And it's very like not what you want to see on TV in 2023.
So that being said, let's break this down. More lead characters, 75 more than most categories. So that's a good thing, because we need more lead characters, because then you're actually getting to learn about the characters and the representation. The vast majority of psychosocial disabilities are NOS and BIT characters. Some of the most harmful narratives for disability representation is in this category. 130 cis male versus 107 cis female, 1 non-binary male, 2 trans, 1 female, and 1 trans non-binary. So is that 180 or 130?
130.
130 heterosexuals and 93 unknown. 8 lesbians, 1 of them trans, 5 gay, 4 female bi/pan. Only 7% of actors openly disabled, and 24% are not. 43 Black characters, 34 IPOC, and 163 white.
Yeah.
Neurological. So remember how I said some disabilities are very tough and masculine and brisk, and you're a pirate or a soldier. Well, neurological is the opposite. I feel like a lot of this category is seen as feminine, and we see this present in how it's represented. So do you want to do that?
So 54.5% of this category is elders, which would be to be expected, I guess.
Yeah.
34.5% are adults. There's 9.1% are children, and 1.8% are teens.
Yes. So elder representation leads for the reason you'd expect. 55 characters represented, which is up from 53 in the previous study. So we have a little bit more rep. More representation is elder due to dementia and Alzheimer's storylines. 33 white characters, 13 Black, and 9 IPOC. 26 men and 20 to 29 females. We always see more women with this category, always. Only 2 SLGBTQ rep is 1 lesbian. 15 characters have no sexuality whatsoever. 60% of characters are one-off bit characters. Okay, do this for physical.
Okay, so the physical category. 6.2% are Black females. 8.6% are Black males. 7.4% are IPOC females. 4.9% are IPOC males. 34.6% are white females, and 38.3% are white males.
So physical disability, visibly disabled representation includes some of the worst representation. They don't like showing us if we're physically disabled. And, if you look at the categories where your visibility of disability, like people can tell you're disabled just by looking at you, are less likely to have representation. So you see like dwarfism, 11 characters, blind people are more often able to be, seen as blind because they might have, a white cane, or they might be, they might have a guide dog with them. So that visibility makes sure blind people are less likely to be seen. So this falls in with the physical. Physical representation is largely heterosexual, 40 characters, unknown, 38 characters. So 96% of this category is either heterosexual representation or unknown sexuality. And I personally find that offensive as a trans, bisexual, queer,
You're gonna love the next
wheelchair
line, then.
user. What?
You're
What?
gonna love the next line.
Oh
then.
yeah, 2 SLGBTQ rep included 2 gays and a lesbian. When I said I haven't seen myself represented, I was not lying. So no bisexual, pansexual, asexual, or otherwise rep. Nearly 78% of rep is white.
73, but
Oh,
still
73.
equally horrible.
Yeah, 73% is white. More disabled actors, 33 than not, 31 or unknown. This is the first year. I seem to remember last year we had more actors engaging in disabled mimicry. It's not that much better, so I'm still not happy. Really, it needs to be 0. It needs to be 0. Having disabled actors doesn't seem to improve the vast majority of representation in terms of story. So this is a few assessments based on what we've learned about all these disabled characters. So representation and gendered stereotypes can be tied together. And for anyone who needs the image description, we have this nice little lumberjack guy and this woman wearing a scarf. I don't know.
A scarfed woman with a beret.
A scarf and beret. Yeah. So, so masculine representation. That's what I was talking about, that amputee category, the body and facial differences categories. You're more likely to see these categories have more men or male representation. We tend to say male and female because not every character is a man. We hope for more children and teens. So more males are amputees or have body and facial differences than women. They are considered strong, valiant soldiers, tough, strong. Females with the same disabilities are often used for comic relief. On the flip side, we have feminine representation. Female-led categories are filled with weak women and emasculated men. The neurological category, for example, has more women because brain-related disabilities are often seen as something considered weaker, or you're less than if you're considered, so. We've seen this consistently throughout all 3 studies, the same kind of breakdowns, which is why it's becoming a pattern that they kind of gender this representation. So Ashtyn jokingly said, where have all the homos gone? Queer pride. There is a beautiful queer rainbow image, and a rainbow pride with a pink or a red pride, an orange pride, a yellow pride, a green pride, a blue pride, and a purple pride. So that's the images. And then there is a dinosaur with a rainbow. It's like what are those, like scales?
Yes, his little dinosaur scales are rainbowed.
So Ashtyn says, where have all the homos gone? Just kidding. Have they ever really been on TV? So I incorrectly said 8%. It's only 6% of characters are 2S LGBTQ, and 82% of characters. This includes 10 trans characters. More Black and IPOC trans characters. So this is something I noticed when we first had our first trans characters. They were from the show Pose, and that gave us Black and brown trans rep. Well, we did not have any other trans rep before that. Well, this time, because of scheduling issues, we did not get to see Pose. We did not get to see the final season of Pose. So the only trans female rep this time is white. But what we do see is that we now have trans male and trans non-binary rep, and those are led by Black and brown shows again. So what we're seeing is that Black and brown creators or led shows are including a trans character here or there, and they might happen to be disabled. So I really think that we can say Black and brown people are leading this rep. Not great, but they're doing better than white people because they're giving us the only rep sometimes that we get for trans and non-binary characters. There are more characters with unknown sexuality than 2S LGBTQ plus characters. I don't like that. I want to be represented. I want to see all of you represented that are LGBTQIA plus, you know, we deserve it. So only 75 characters have lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual sexuality. So and the reason why the numbers are a little skewed, so it's not like 75 plus 10 for the 10 trans characters and 75 with diverse sexuality, because some of the trans characters also have diverse sexuality. So it ends up being 82, not 85, because they're the same characters. So single shows are leading the charge with multiple rep. Oh, whoops, hang on. I was trying to move something. And so the L word generation Q accounts for 16% of lesbian representation in this study. And then you have shows like, what was it, Halston and It's a Sin, and they contributed a significant amount to gay rep. So a lot of times this rep is relegated to just one.
It's
one
not
show, yeah.
necessarily a mainstream show. It's a show that was created for the purpose of offering this representation.
Yeah. So the racial breakdown, we're just going to go through this real quick. White representation, 887 white characters out of 1,342. There's 66% of disabled characters on TV, 50 more white disabled characters than our last study. White representation isn't better in terms of story, but it's definitely more present. Black representation accounts for 238 Black characters, 30 more Black disabled characters than our last study. Mainly adults and elders are represented, leaving children and teens without representation, and creators need to do better. IPOC representation, 217 IPOC characters, 50 more IPOC characters than the last study. Not nearly enough characters as this is split by Asian, Latina, Indigenous / First People, and other identities. So the problem with this is that we're basically saying, okay, this is all white people, this is all Black people, and then we're going to divide all the representation amongst all other racial communities, when really IPOC should be the biggest, and we should say, okay, we got all these different racial and ethnic identities, and then, white and Black representation could, complement that. By definitely white representation needs to go down just significantly. So not nearly enough character. Oh, wait, I said that. Sorry about that. And so much more work needs to be done. Oh, whoops. Wait.
Where are you going?
Sorry. Okay, do you want to read this? Because I feel weird quoting myself.
Okay. Disabled mimicry is the performance of disabled roles by non-disabled actors or actors without the specific disability represented, which is often reduced to mimicking disability through physicality and vocal intonation.
Yeah, I think I wrote that.
You did.
Yeah. So disabled mimicry harms the disabled community. The representation not not written or acted by disabled people, comes from a place of pity and stereotypes, often things found in other forms of media. Only 110 actors identify as disabled, which is 8% of rep. 395 actors are not disabled. They are engaging in disabled mimicry. 843 actors do not disclose if they are or aren't disabled, which makes sense given the depth of this study and the overall societal attitudes. So what we've learned, do you want to go over what we've learned, Ash?
Okay.
Okay, have a drink too.
You read the first half because it's easier.
Okay, one show can mean too much. When shows like Pose disappear, so does trans female representation for Black, Indigenous, and other POC women or females. When Too Close was canceled, the deaf, hard of hearing representation went too.
You want to go or me?
You can go.
Okay, so it's more than acting. Hiring disabled actors is imperative, but there's more work to be done. Disabled writers, directors, and consultants need to be included to ensure authentic representation. This one won't come as a surprise, but there should be more than white representation. Most categories are dominated by white disabled people, and minorities just aren't found. This presents a limited view of representation and completely cuts out children, teens, and adults that are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color. And more 2S LGBTQ+. Trans representation is almost non-existent. When it is available, it is often tokenized or represented in only one way. Representation swings too far in one way. It's one group representing an entire rainbow.
Yep. Okay, so what sets FilmDis apart? So we're about to tell you all, I did post a little bit about this on social media, but we watched 2,768 hours of television, Ashtyn and I alone on our own together. I watched 1,279 hours. Ashtyn watched for 1,489 hours. 250 shows the number of shows that we watched and analyzed. Teaser to credits. Dom and Ashtyn watch every single episode of the shows they analyzed for the study to not only count the amount of disability on TV, but to analyze the representation that is offered. So you can support us. One of the best ways to help FilmDis is to share our studies. Let people know about this important work and information. Other ways, this study and paper were completed through the work of Ashtyn Law and Dom Evans, with additional work by William and Jay Neely. If you're interested in sponsoring the next study or supporting the study by financial ways, you can find out how at the end of the full paper, which is available on our FilmDis website at FilmDis.com. And you also can just contact us if you want to find out how. Also, if anybody is looking for data analyst work, Bill is a great analyst. I highly recommend him. He's looking for work right now, and he would really do a great job for you. And I'm going to end it with a quote from Ashtyn, and then we're going to tell you who got our best representation of the year. So what does that say? Words to remember. Okay. Together, we can ensure that no child has to live with the confusing notion that they aren't important or valid enough to see themselves represented on TV. Okay, so that was our main presentation. We have about 20 minutes, which is great because I'm going to tell you about what was our best representation. And then we will give you a chance to have a Q&A. And then if you want to ask us, anything, privately or whatever, you can stay after and we'll be around for a few minutes and whatnot. So first, Ashton, I think you should say a few words about New Amsterdam, because I know that we mentioned them. New Amsterdam had the most representation of this study with 84 characters, and Chicago Med had 82. So
Yes.
it was interesting that we could compare and contrast those shows.
Yeah. So I am the fortunate person that gets to watch pretty much every medical drama on local television. So of all of those dramas, New Amsterdam was by far my favorite. And one of the main reasons for this study that I loved it so much was because of Sandra Mae Frank, which she plays a character named Dr. Wilder. She's a deaf surgeon. And more than that, she's just kind of like, she's this badass disabled character who doesn't, make any apologies for who she is, and she expects everyone to respect her no matter what. And they take the time to really show her, operating and to work with people, and just she gets to be an actual fully fledged human being, which is something kind of rare for disability representation.
I think you should read. So I took from the paper what we wrote about. So this year we have 3. The previous years we've only had 1 and like a runner-up.
Oh, you took something. That's good, because I was afraid I was going to spoil something that would come out next paper.
So why don't you read? So this is Ashton's show, so I'm going to let her read what it.
Okay. So the best deaf, hard of hearing character on the study comes from New Amsterdam. Dr. Elizabeth Wilder is beautifully portrayed by Sandra Mae Frank. She's an oncologist and ends up heading the New Amsterdam Cancer Unit. She travels with an interpreter, and they show her using adaptive equipment during surgery so that she can communicate her needs to her nurses while operating. Another nice but subtle thing she does is when she is talking to someone using ASL, her primary means of communication, she tells people to look at her, not at her interpreter. She is a dynamic and sometimes complex character that is a wonderful addition to disability representation, especially in an often ignored community. It will be sad to see her go when the study covers the final year of New Amsterdam next year.
And Ashton already knows what happened. She already finished that show for next year, and she has been very sad about it. So our other 2 rep was, one is our winner from our last year's study. She continues to amaze. Her name is Sammy Haney. She is a child actor, and she played Esperanza on Raising Dion. And I wrote, this was my show. Well, actually, Ashton helped write this, but if we had to single out one single performer that stands out for us with a glowing rating for representation, it would without a doubt be Latina actress Sammy Haney. Haney played Esperanza on the now canceled Netflix show Raising Dion. Like the actress, the character has osteogenesis imperfecta type 3 and uses a power wheelchair. As a disabled child, Esperanza is a fantastic portrayal because she's allowed to be a child, plain and simple. Her life is not relegated to being a disabled prop. In fact, much to our pleasure, and likely dozens of disabled little girls, Esperanza will not let your ableism stand. She will tell you you're wrong and remind you how badass she is. We need so many more of these characters in all age groups. And then finally, I consider this the best rep of the study, and that is Jillian Mercado as Maribel on the L Word Generation Q. Likewise, Jillian Mercado plays the character Maribel on the L Word Generation Q. Maribel's part starts out as a background part and quickly becomes a supporting role. She's incredibly dynamic in terms of representation. Maribel is an immigration attorney who is single and looking to connect with someone, so she dates frequently. She's seen in a variety of scenarios, from riding horses to being one of the few physically disabled people to perform in a sex scene on TV. She's a good portrayal because they allow a disabled person to play themselves and just exist as the character they are meant to be. In fact, we consider this to be one of the best, if not the very best, portrayals of a disabled character in this study. So, though, what we were really interested to note was that all of these characters were female representation. So as much as there's male representation, overwhelmingly dominating rep, especially white men, those representations were not even good enough to be considered our best rep. So, why even have that if it's not going to be good? So, okay, so Ash, we are done with our presentation.
Alright.
Yeah, so we have about 15 minutes. So who has questions? Oh, yep. So I think we got some hands up. Please put your hand up and we will get to you. If you have a question. Or if you have a comment, does anybody have a comment? We presented a lot of stuff and a lot of you are marginalized. If you're feeling the way I did when I saw the breakdown, I mean, I've had a month or more to really dig through this, but when I first saw it, I was, throwing things at my computer.
I always explain to people, I'm always super hopeful, but never terribly surprised. I want them to do better, but I know they won't.
Okay, so someone said, how do you intend to use the information you collect in this study?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is for me, and then I'll let Ashtyn answer. So what I do is I think that this helps make me a better creator because I create television with Ashtyn. Now we create it, but it's hard to get it on TV. People don't want to take our calls or even, let us, show off our work so they could even see it. But I believe that we've created television that is fantastic. We have multiple pilots just waiting that we're developing right now that they're unlike anything on television. They're just even just basic stories. We're tired of seeing everything overdone over and over again. When you keep making the same movies over and over, if the characters weren't disabled anyway, they don't want to add disabled characters to that. And I know, people are like, well, you could make, Ghostbusters and have disabled characters or whatever, but it's like, can we start by telling our own stories? And there's a huge lack of originality on television, but I would say, and everybody that has read our scripts has agreed that our work is very original. And I would say that it's because of this study. We watch so much and we write what we don't want. We also use this for consultation. We consult in Hollywood. I do script consultations. I do on-set consultations. We can work with directors. So we use this and we can literally say, hey, you're doing this wrong, and we can show you in our study. So yeah. The paper is live. Yep. So hang on, I will share a link real quick. Let me grab it. The paper is live. We have it available. And we have our 2 previous studies. They're all available in multiple formats. We have them. So everything's available for both Google Drive and accessible PDF. We've had our PDFs tagged, so they work with screen reader. So let me grab that link. And so you'll have a fact sheet, you'll have the main paper, and then there's an easy language version. So the easy language versions and the fact sheet are much shorter. So if you you know, we know not everybody's gonna want to or be able to look through a 166-page document, but I will tell you that in all of hang on, it's not letting me send the link.
There you go.
Sorry, what was I saying, Ash?
You said in all of the, and then stop. So I'm not
What
sure
was I
where that was
talking
heading.
about? Hang on. Let me look at the captioning. Oh, yeah. What I was gonna say is that I have like a tree, well, like a bookmark tree on the side, like a link tree. So you can go through the sections of the paper in both the PDF and the Google version, so that you don't have to read the whole paper. Or if you want to read it in chunks, you can just say, okay, I'll click on the addiction section. I can read through that. I'll click on the section on race. I'll read through that. So you can read it at your leisure if you want to read the whole document. We really set it up to try to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. So let's see. Can you pitch from a casting? Yes, Lottie, please.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I just need to turn everything back on. In response to Gabrielle's question, I know I work in Toronto and I work in casting. Something that studies, it's actually how Dom and Ash and I met, is from a casting perspective, because I haven't watched 2,000 hours of television. So it's really helpful to have things like this when you work in casting, to be able to look and go, wow, okay, I now know where I need to put the work in. And I can now look at roles and go, okay, well, maybe I would have looked at this in a certain way. Well, now I know where my responsibility is, because both as a disabled person and as a casting director, if I've got this role, I now know where I need to be putting my work in to make changes to what I do, because, you know, I now have a responsibility. And if we don't have that kind of data available to us, it can be really difficult and your view can get clouded. Obviously, you can tell from my accent, I'm from the UK, and it's kind of the way that the market that I'm used to is quite different to the Canadian and the US market. So when I came over here, getting to know Dom and Ash, and then having access to this kind of data and having it presented in the way that the study is presented, it does enable us to be able to look at things in that very stark way of going, wow, okay, now we can see where we need to do work. Because much as we would love, you know, in a lot of ways be able to go, okay, it is in a lot of ways a numbers game. And if we want to fight that and we want to see that change happening, we have to start looking at it in the way that, you know, big budget production also looks at things. When we, you know, when I get sent something from production, I have to look at it in the way that they do. I have to take off my disabled actor hat, as it were, and put that to one side and be able to go, okay, I need to look at this the way that you're looking at it. And if I can't go back to them with a thing of going, okay, well, here are the figures from this, and here is how you're going to make money and get viewing figures and get people to watch this, we can't sell it to them in the same way that ultimately producers look at things, because they need to be able to sell this to the people that make the money. So this way, you know, the studies are incredibly important, and why this work is so valuable is that now I can, you know, look at a project and go, I need you to cast in this way, and this is why. And if we don't have data that I can just lay out in front of them in that way, and that's how we, you know, use these studies, and why this work is so incredibly valuable. So from a casting perspective, we really do need this kind of information, raw data, And, you know, it seems quite clinical, but it's incredibly important to be able to make artistic choices as well. So
Thank you,
that's-
Lottie. Thank you. And
That's-
Lottie, you reminded me. So before we go further, I need to thank some people. So obviously Lottie has been such a great champion of our work, and she is part of Team FilmDis. She will be working on our productions when we are
Lucky enough to get them going.
yes. So we love
It's only a
Lottie.
matter of time.
And you can attest, you've read our work. Is it not the most original stuff? Like, just brilliant.
I can absolutely vouch. There's one in particular that, I mean, and I read a lot of scripts because that's what I do. And this one full on gave me goosebumps. And my family are in the industry in the UK, and I called my dad at a stupid UK time and woke him up and was like, I just read something pretty seriously amazing. And it's, yeah. So watch out. Change is coming, and it's, yeah, it's gonna be awesome, and I'm really excited. Okay.
Okay,
And
so
I promised I'd behave, but I get really overexcited when I talk about this particular project, so I'm going to put my mute back on. before say
oh, I
anything.
get so excited too. I told you, like, so Ashton's our primary screenwriter. She's brilliant, but she doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm like biased, but I'm not. I actually have this thing where I have to be honest even to her. But she like still likes to doubt that that's real. But if it was horrible, I would just be like, sorry, babe, it's really bad. I don't want to
It's
make.
nothing personal.
Yeah.
It's just your name is also on it.
I
so,
know, but
you know.
like, I mean, I would be honest. I don't want to make something horrible. So, but okay, I really, really, really have to thank the amazing Bill Neely.
Who was very patient through this entire process.
He was. Bill, did I drive you too much up a wall? I hope not too much, but Bill did all the data analyzing for us.
Yes, I owe him that thank you too, because I'm not very math oriented, and I did it the last 2 times. And I'm so glad that I don't do it anymore. So Bill, thank you from literally the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're both welcome. It really was not too much, Tom. It was amazing for me to look at it for the first time and just really, as a non-disabled cisgender white male, it kind of made me angry.
Yeah, why am I all represented here? You know, when you see it, like you see it yourself, it's like, I don't think anybody, you know, that sees this can defend it. You know what I mean? They can't be like, well, we just need more cis white men, don't we? You know, like it's just not defensible. So
that's kind of the joke with people that know us and the study. They either say we're either passionate about it or we're angry.
yeah.
And I don't know how you can't be a little bit angry if you're reading the numbers and they're all laid out like they are. And you're just like, well, what's the matter with that? I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I just.
The most US thing in this study is that the white men are the most represented, and yet their representation is the most mediocre, as none of them had a good character that we could consider our best. So is that not the most cis white man thing you've ever heard? Because it really sums it up in writing and data for us. So okay, last question. Leroy, can you explain your question? What is EDI? Is EDI making a difference in Hollywood? What is EDI? I'm happy to answer.
I feel like we should, like,
yeah,
when he tells us, we'll be like, oh, but like,
yeah.
It's not coming to me.
So we'll wait for that. But yeah, as we're waiting to see what Leroy's asking, I just want to thank you all for coming. It's so nice to meet you. If there's anything that, you want to talk about, feel free to reach out. Most of you are through Lottie or Vanny, so they can also get in touch with me if you need to get my email. Anything else that you want to add, Ash?
No, I mean, we're already working on our next study. We hope to have that out
Oh, yeah.
by the end of the year.
EDI is the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Movement in Hollywood. Do you mean like the one in the disabled community? I'm happy to get you my email, Gabrielle. So, Leroy, I personally don't see them making much of a difference. I will tell you that I've been told, Ashtyn and I have been told by diversity initiatives in Hollywood that our work is too good to qualify for help and assistance.
We've apparently already made it without
We've apparently
making
already
it.
made it.
So
Yeah. So
it's flattering that we're ahead of some people, but not so much that
I
we can't
know.
get on the air still.
So
It's really
I think we need to look at who's leading the movement, Leroy, to really see what's happening. And I'm guessing, I can't like prove it, but I think that the numbers show that diversity and inclusion efforts are not doing nearly enough.
Yeah. I can't say anything for Hollywood specifically in terms of movies, but you wouldn't know that they're doing anything positive that's happening in TV. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. If anybody has anything else they want to say, they can, talk to us right now. But otherwise, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And can we get some like?
This is Anita. I did have a question.
okay.
So like the awards, okay? They're generally tend to be inaccessible. Folks in wheelchairs can't get on the stage and all. And what's happening to stop that? Because if we have more representation of disabled people, particularly people with physical disabilities, who may need mobility equipment and whatnot, like wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, and stuff like that. Like, how do you, like right now, if you were to win an award, you can't even get on the stage to begin with.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with Ellie Stroker when she had to stay behind stage. That's all industries. So I feel like there's a lot of areas of inclusion. And I think we're kind of focusing on hitting, we're doing something before we should, like, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Like I think we need to be focusing on creating better and more roles, because a lot of the award shows, when they do award us, it's just like a tokenization anyway. You know what I mean? It's not even for work that's helping our community. So I mean, I think that a lot of our efforts are going into making stages accessible, but where are they going into making Hollywood sets accessible?
And it's never been, I mean, it's so rarely an issue, because normally they're not even letting physically disabled people play themselves. So, it's an issue of Eddie Redmayne sauntering on stage to pick up his award,
We have all these physically disabled actors, but you're only seeing them in bit roles, a lot of them. So they're not even qualifying really for awards. You you don't really give out awards to, you might give it to a supporting character, but not a like one-off, you know, unless it's like an amazing guest star performance, but like they're not making the stages accessible because they're not even including us. Like it's false to say that there's more representation out there. There's been representation. It's just who's allowed to audition, who's allowed in the, you know, casting rooms, who's allowed
And-
in on sets, you know.
And honestly, it shows kind of what they think of disability, because they don't think to make the ramp, because why on earth are they going to need it in the first place?
It's interesting. I think was it Michelle? Actually, I was chatting to somebody the other day, and at the Screen Actors Guild, I think it was at the SAG Awards, somebody tripped on their dress going up the stairs. And my comment was, well, for goodness sake, why hadn't they put in a ramp? Because she tripped on the stairs. If there'd been a ramp there, she wouldn't have fallen over. And they're making this big thing about whichever actress it was who tripped on the stairs. And I'm like,
And-
put in a ramp. Everybody likes ramps. And then she wouldn't have fallen up the stairs in the
And
first place.
The sad thing is,
Access, it's
they
good
would
for
probably be more likely
everybody.
to put in the ramp for the.
Well,
If they
yeah,
put in
yeah.
the
Well,
ramp in the
also,
first place, she never would have fallen over.
Well, you-
Access is good for everyone, guys. Put in a
well,
ramp.
you know, like there's always so many people that are disabled that are getting older. You know what I mean? Like all of these older actors could
Older
benefit from more
actors.
accessibility.
It's like my catchphrase whenever I'm doing anything is seriously, physical access is good for everyone. Why do they have stairs? Because they have to employ people to stand at the bottom of the stairs to help everybody in their massive gowns to get up the stairs.
Mhm.
Why don't they just put in a ramp and then everybody wins?
There are a
Access
few
works for
disabilities where
everybody.
people say they do need steps because ramps are.
Well, let's
Really?
have
They
both.
can have both.
Yeah, we can have both. Exactly.
Why not have both? And then everybody's happy.
Yep.
It just seems silly. Let's make everything accessible and then nobody has to worry about it. It just made me smile when you asked about access at award shows, because everybody would benefit right now, and then nobody would have to worry about it, whether you are disabled or not disabled yet.
Mhm.
We'd never have to
Michelle
worry
said-
about it again.